Welcome to the Inspiring Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, which serves a vibrant community in northern Indiana known for its generosity and strong network of nonprofit organizations. I'm Marshall King, your co-host with Kevin, a veteran nonprofit CEO who now coaches others. Our guest today is Berghoff, Chief Development Officer with the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. Carrie is a valued colleague who specializes in making our donors feel special. Welcome to the Inspiring Good podcast, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.
It is such an honor to have you. We've been excited about finding this time together. Of course, we all have the privilege of working with you, but not everybody knows what you do as the development officer. Can you talk about being the chief development officer? And what does a day-to-day look in that role for you?
Sure. It has a lot of variety, and I love that. It's managing the existing relationships that we have with about 600 different fund holders and donors in this community, but then also pursuing new donors and new relationships and navigating both of those. I go to a lot of our events that we have for donors, but also the nonprofits in town that are having their signature fundraising events. I try to be there to support them and their causes as well. And then also a number of internal meetings, managing a team of 5 people.
So on any given day, you're talking with a lot of people.
A lot of people. I joke that I hear from a donor while I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, and then also when I'm putting my kids to bed at night. So it extends beyond the typical 8 to 5. And so I hear from donors on the phone. They're texting me. They're emailing me. I'm face-to-face, running into them at the grocery store.
They have questions, they have concerns, they want to know how something works. Donor advised funds they're not necessarily new, but they are new to a lot of people. Maybe you can talk a little about, we have 600 donors, but what are donor advised funds?
Sure. So we have over 200 donor advised funds now, and it really simplifies a way for people to be philanthropic. So for people that are giving to a number of different causes throughout the year, they're trying to keep track of the tax receipts to all these various entities. They can give a contribution to us. We are the charity, so we issue them a tax receipt, and then we're their service when it comes to their philanthropy. They contact us and ask us to grant dollars to these various nonprofits, and we do that on their behalf. So they can think of it as one charitable gift, and then they can grant out at their convenience.
Boy,
That's the bulk of my work.
What a wonderful opportunity for donors to put order in their charitable giving, but also have a way that they don't have to do it, because they may or may not be here all year long, and they may have different organizations that are reaching out to them. And what a way to help organize a family or a donor with their charitable giving, because there's a lot of requests.
Or a company.
So true.
So we hope that it simplifies the process for them and brings back the joy of giving to them.
Yeah, I also think the order for their taxes, and it must be a blessing to all of these estate planners and these advisors and lawyers and bankers. I think those are all hugely important to keeping order for philanthropists.
Carrie, I love that we do this, but it also sounds like an awful lot of work to do it on behalf of these donors. Like, why do we do it? Like, why offer a donor advised fund to these folks and provide the service? And do we charge them for that?
Sure. Our mission is to improve the quality of life in Elkhart County by inspiring generosity. And so if we can come up with a way that makes it easier for people to be philanthropic, the donor advised fund is the right answer for that. We charge 0.25% for that. So that's a very modest fee. And every fund is different. Some fund holders I hear from 3-4 times a week. Others may only do their charitable giving in December. So there's a large variety.
So I've lived here about 33 years now, and I come from New England. I have never seen a place like Elkhart County as far as generosity and giving and understanding philanthropy. And I think if you can maybe give a short definition of philanthropy. Why do people give?
Why do people give? I think for the majority, it comes back to their family values. It's a learned behavior that they learn from their parents or their grandparents. And so I think it's important for people to instill that in youth. And with people attending church less often, they really need to learn that at home from their family.
One of the things that I've always been impressed with is the intergenerational. That's how grandparents teach their adult children who teach their children. And I just think in Elkhart County, that is an amazing gift. The gift of teaching and being an example for philanthropy.
Sure.
And you work with that because you work with multi-generation families.
Yes. I work with the Bontrager family. That is a great example of that. But there are other families that will have a set amount that they give away a year. And they get together at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they'll tell their children or grandchildren that they have to come up with a nonprofit that they want to give to and informally present it to their family. And then they discuss it and decide how much to give. But what they're really doing is teaching their kids and their grandkids about giving back to their communities and philanthropy. And so hopefully that passes on intergenerationally.
Could you talk a little bit about, so how did you get into this work? And I know at one point you had worked for former Governor Mitch Daniels and worked in Indianapolis and really to get your start. But how did you end up in philanthropy? Because you are really good at it.
Oh, thank you, Kevin.
You really
You
are
are
good at
too.
it. So can you talk a little about your journey?
Sure. I graduated college in 2008, which was a horrible year to need a job. So I was trying to rethink, what do I want to do with so many jobs being cut? And I'd had experience in political event planning, and I really wanted to be a corporate meeting planner. So it's a shot in the dark, but I reached out to the Mitch Daniels campaign and asked if they'd do any events. And turns out I was hired. It was my first job out of college, and I was on the fundraising committee for his reelection campaign. And I traveled throughout the state and worked with donors that were having fundraising events for Governor Daniels in their home. So it was incredible networking for a 22-year-old. I made lifelong friendships out of that experience. And I got to know Governor Daniels fairly well because we spent a lot of evenings together at these various fundraisers. When he won, I went to work in the office of the governor, and I worked as the executive assistant to the chief of staff for the governor. And that was an incredible experience. It was very fast-paced and demanding. I learned to think on my toes. But at the root of it, the experience I had was with donors, donor relations. So when his term ended in 2013, I moved back to Elkhart, where I was born and raised. And I had known of the foundation. I'd followed the Gunlack story while I was in Indianapolis. And I thought, I wonder if they do any donor work. But I didn't know the extent of it until I arrived here in 2016.
And that's how you ended up at the Community Foundation.
In between those two, I worked for a small business startup here in Elkhart County, and one of the investors was on the board of the Community Foundation, and he introduced me to Pete.
So I know that we're different as a foundation than we were in 2016. We've continued to grow and so on. And I know you're in a different role, but how are we different?
Oh,
How have we changed from where you sit over the last 10 years?
sure. So I started in 2016, and I was the 12th employee, and we had $230 million in assets. So now, almost 9 years later, I believe we have 30 employees. We're closing in on $500 million, and my role has changed as well.
The Boonlock gift really was a springboard for a lot of philanthropy in Elkhart County. We also have a great relationship with Lilly. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that relationship between the Community Foundation and Lilly.
Sure. So the Lilly Foundation has a program called GIFT, or Giving Indiana Funds for Tomorrow, where they give to the 94 community foundations in Indiana. There's been 8 rounds of gifts that have increased significantly over 30-some years. The last round, Gift 8, was announced in 2023, and we were able to raise $5 million for our fund for Elkhart County, as well as the Tolson Center. And by doing that, we were able to apply for a competitive grant that we were awarded for $7.5 million for the Building Strong Brains initiative. We also went in on a regional grant with Marshall and St. Joe counties and were awarded $20 million to share between the 3 counties for housing.
And just in 2024, we added $28 million to here at the Community Foundation. Tell me, above and beyond the financials, tell me about that. Like, how did that happen?
So actually, it was less than the years before that, but it's still remarkable. I think it says a lot about the philanthropy in Elkhart County. When I look at the breakdown of the gifts and the funds, some of them come to us because of a windfall event where someone sold their business. Others come to us in their heartbreak because they lost a child and they're looking for a way to find some comfort or good in their grief. A number of those dollars are estates, which is twofold as well. Like, one part is incredible that they're honoring their life by giving to their favorite charities, but it's also the loss of a relationship of a fund holder or a donor. So now that our founding donors are into their 90s, Pete and I are probably attending half a dozen funerals a year.
And Pete would be Dr. Pete, who was our chief executive officer.
Yes.
It's a sad thing, but also what a statement of love and faith for these leaders who have developed interfamily responsibility of philanthropy, but also that they have this deep relationship with you and Pete that goes back for decades, and that they're lifelong. They made their money here and they want to make sure that their money stays here. That the gift of philanthropy just keeps giving in Elkhart County. And if I'm a person who wants to start a DAF, a donor advised fund, or I'm not exactly sure, how hard is it to actually build a relationship with the Community Foundation?
So actually yesterday I had a attorney in town reach out to me and say, I'm introducing you to a couple. They want to start a scholarship fund and they're very philanthropic and I think you should get to know them. So we rely heavily on referrals. So I reached out to this couple and we're going to meet in the next few weeks. I suspect that they'll do a scholarship and maybe consider some ways to simplify their corporate giving, as well as think about some estate planning for charitable gifts after their lifetime. At any given time, we're navigating half a dozen or so estate gifts or bequests where someone has said in their lifetime they want the money to come to us upon their death to benefit their various nonprofit
One of the
their
things
choice.
I really appreciate about the Community Foundation, and particularly with you, is if somebody wants to get information or they want a donor potentially wants to start a fund, you are always available to give the information, you and your team, to educate, to teach them, to say, see if this fits your family values.
Sure. So we prefer to meet with these people in person. I think our best work is when Pete and I sit down with these families in his office and say, what are you trying to accomplish and how can we help you? But other donors perhaps want to do it over email or over the phone. That we've had funds started that with donors I've never met in person. That wouldn't be the preference, but I try to meet them where they're at. So if a donor emails me, I email them back. If they call, I call them back. If they want to meet in person, we do it face to face. Opening a fund is very simple. Pete jokes that we can do it in less than an hour and we don't even ask for ID. So it's just a simple outline and agreement where they outline what they want to name their fund, what the purpose is, and then once they give us a gift, we take it from there and the fund is created. It's easier than opening a checking account.
So speaking of family values, so I've met your parents and you look so much like your mom. And I think a lot of your parents, as I think a lot of you. Can you talk a little bit about growing up? You grew up here in Elkhart, but talk about the family values that continue this high touch, high service that you provide for the Community Foundation.
Yeah, I did. I was born and raised here in Elkhart. My parents still live in the home I grew up in. And, after nearly 40 years, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that you know of your hometown when you grew up here. My parents chose to move here. They're both from upstate New York. And they came here for a job in the 80s with the RV industry. And growing up, I was told, and I think many of my peers were told, to spread your wings, leave Elkhart County, go to college, and land elsewhere, grow your roots somewhere else. My parents did not by any means encourage me to move back, and it was the last thing I expected. But now I chose to do, and I think more and more people are choosing to move back to Elkhart County. And I think that the narrative has shifted. I don't think there's any shame in that whatsoever. I think people take great pride in wanting to be close to their family and returning to the town that they grew up in.
I promised you a curveball, so here's my curveball. I like chili a lot. And I understand that once a year there's a famous Berghoff chili, not a competition, but an event that many of us come to, and it is really good chili. And it has a lot of people. And that's where I met your parents. It's where I meet a lot of people and how involved you are in the community. So how did that start?
Well, you really need to talk to my husband about that, Drake Berghoff. It's his event. It's just in our backyard. He used to live on the lake down in Syracuse, Leesburg area. He used to live on Lake Tippecanoe, and some of the guys on the lake would have this annual chili party. And so that was a tradition that he wanted to start up again. And so we were going to do it in 2020. Then we all know what happened that year. So we put it off a year. But this fall will be the 5th annual Berghoff Broil. And we have about 130 of our friends and family come over. It's open house style all day. We have donuts in the morning and grilled cheese at lunch. And he makes 13 gallons of chili over a cast iron pot in our backyard. We have a bounce house for the kids. And it has become our direct family's favorite family tradition. Our girls love it. We love it. And I hope that we continue it until they're in college and they bring home their college friends to it as well.
So your husband is the one who taught me that perhaps one of the best ways to make a grilled cheese is to put mayonnaise instead of butter on the outside of the bread. So it sounds odd if you haven't done it before, but if you have not done it, do it, because you get this crispness and it just works.
It does work. My husband is an incredible cook.
Yeah. But one of the hallmarks of this event, Carrie, and again, you live at this incredible pace where you're answering donor calls, you're doing things with your parents, you're doing things in the community, but you're also a mom to 3 active girls. How do you juggle motherhood and professional life? Because you do it well, but I also know it's very hard. And you aren't alone in that, but I would like to hear your reflections on doing that.
Sure. So it is hard. And I guess that answer could change depending on the day. I'm blessed that my husband works from home. And so we don't have the same child care navigations as other parents, but we both work full time and he keeps our girls at home. So we have different schedules. Our girls are 6, 4, and 2, and they require school drop off, school pickup, and I promise we go to the doctor 3 times a week. So there's always something going on that adds a kink to the schedule. My parents are retired and they live about a month away. They help as much as they possibly can. But then again, they're also retired and I want them to travel and enjoy their travels. I would say that you have to learn to give yourself grace. I'm my own hardest critic when it comes to that. And my husband and my mom and Pete are all enormous support systems to me. When I got promoted, I sought out the advice of other working moms like Rebecca Shetler-Fast and said, give me all your life hacks. Like, how am I going to do this? And Pete introduced me to Susan Ford, who is now my mentor. And that has been a godsend to me as someone who really is carrying the same deck of cards, if you will, and understanding the pressures at home and at work. She has really become almost like a big sister to me.
And frankly, you're a big sister to several new generation coming up. They're looking at you, seeing how do you do that? Which is amazing, isn't it? That you just seemed like you got in this role and already you're an example for the next generation coming up. So it's a kudos to you for being able to handle all that.
Thank you. It's not easy. And I'm probably more vocal about the struggles than most, but I think that it should be shared when you're having a difficult day, or if you didn't sleep at all overnight, maybe just say that instead of everybody wondering why you're so crappy. Clear the air. And Kevin, last year when my baby wasn't sleeping, I said to you at one point, like, I am really struggling. Like, I just have so much brain fog. And you said, your 50% is still better than other people's 100. And that really stuck with me
Still is.
as a reminder to just give yourself grace. Like every day you can't be 100% at home and at work. It's impossible. So my approach is generally triage, and whoever has the greatest need you're dealing with first. And somehow with a lot of grace and with a lot of support, most of the time it works.
And thanks to yours and a few other people's leadership, you created 100 Women.
It actually was already established before I joined here. But I always say, even if I didn't work at the foundation, I would be a part of 100 Women Who Care. They meet 4 times a year, and within an hour, they raise $10,000 for a local nonprofit. It's a huge impact without a lot of commitment, and it's fun, too. So it's really a rewarding group to be a part of.
And can anybody join 100 Women? How does that work?
It's meant for any woman
No.
that lives or works or cares about Elkhart County. So you guys can't come.
I got to go once on the 10th anniversary,
Yeah, one night only.
but then they asked me to come and show up and take the pictures for the press releases. So it still feels so unfair.
You're an honorary member.
I'm joking. It's delightful to see the joy that this group has. And it's just one of the it's a visible way. It's a very visible, regular piece of generosity of Elkhart County that you and others have helped shepherd. And Kevin's right. It's been fun to watch that. Let's talk about another one. And let's talk about an offshoot of that. There was a grant given at 100 Women to help create a safe haven baby box. This became a passion project. You presented it, and it was voted on by the membership to give the grant to it. You've been passionate about this, and it's taken a couple of years, but talk about that process and where we came from and where we got to.
I first learned about safe haven baby boxes in 2022, and I had looked on their website and I thought, why doesn't Elkhart County have one of these? And now here, a few years later, I think we have 4 now in Elkhart County. So I did present the idea to 100 Women Who Care to raise money for a box in Goshen. And the group as a whole voted for that, and they gave $10,000. And then the rest of the money was made up with public philanthropy. We didn't want the city of Goshen and their fire department to take any costs from this. It is a passion project of mine. I can't even begin to understand the desperation a parent has to be in when that is their best choice, to relinquish and surrender their child in a box on the side of a fire department. I hope that they have other options and resources before it comes to that, and I know that they do through Safe Haven Baby Boxes. However, when they're faced with that choice, it really is meant to be a last resort. And I think a week after 100 Women Who Care, Elkhart County chose to raise the money for one in Goshen, a baby was surrendered in Elkhart. So it's a beautiful option for parents in crisis.
Yeah. And the fact that we have 4 just speaks to the heart of this community, the whole county, that there's 4 just in Elkhart County.
Yep.
It's incredible.
Elkhart, Goshen, I believe Township has one, and Middlebury is getting one.
Incredible. Marshall and I both love stories. He's a far better storyteller than I am. Can you talk a little bit about a story of a philanthropist and a nonprofit, and just give us a story of what you have seen or felt with that connection between a philanthropist or a family and a nonprofit. And is there a favorite story you like to tell? And you don't have to mention names or whoever it is, but you get to hear both sides and you get to make these connections. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, choosing a favorite is hard. We process thousands of grants for donors every single year. I think that there's a misperception that only wealthy people have philanthropic funds with us, but we commonly meet with everyday folk who want to give back to their community, or they want to start a scholarship in their parents' name, or they want to start an endowment for their church. There are so many heartbreaking stories. I go back to that again, where someone has lost a child, and after navigating their grief, they come to us just seeking a way to find some good in it. And if we can help them make an impact or make a legacy for their child's name, I think that's really rewarding work. And some of those memorial funds have been very rewarding work for me to be a part of.
I know from my previous time with Boys and Girls Clubs, I have received, the Boys and Girls Club has received that generosity, that those feelings of paying it forward. And so much of your work is paying it forward and allowing philanthropists to pay it forward. And your point is spot on. You don't have to be super wealthy to do this. If you ring bells for Salvation Army at any place around this county, you'll see the kind of people who are dropping money in the kettle, and they're not always driving fancy cars because they understand that they don't have much, but they're always going to share. It's incredible the amount of small wealth, and I'm talking nickels, coins, $1, $5, that people will give because somebody gave to them once and they feel blessed just for where they are in life. That's why I love ringing bells, because I meet some extraordinary people. And I always want to have dialogue with them. I don't want to just say Merry Christmas and they walk away. I just want to know who they are, why they're giving, and they have amazing stories. If you have not rung bells in a long time or never, you go ring bells and find out who these people are who are dropping money in the kettles when they don't have to, but they
I,
choose to.
I made my girls do that a couple Christmases ago just for the experience for them.
Carrie, you've mentioned that a lot of times the estate gifts that we get or some of the donations, they arise out of a relationship, but not always. You see the whole range like we've been talking about. What advice do you give to someone who wasn't taught philanthropy or generosity? Where do they start?
I bet they are more philanthropic than they give themselves credit for. I think people, like when you ask people, do you volunteer? They'll say no, but they give at their church or they help coach a little league team. People are involved in their community in a number of ways. They're in service clubs. That is all philanthropy too. That's true for giving as well. So if you're putting how many school fundraisers are there, or you're raising money for Girl Scouts or whatever it may be, you're being philanthropic. It's just a matter of looking at the scale.
I think one reason I love Elkhart County and the philanthropic way of thinking is how much paying it forward is common sense, and how little they don't want anything back. And they just want to pay from because somebody was kind to them or they see a need, and they're not looking for the recognition. And in this county, that is what drives a lot of philanthropy, is just paying it forward and saying thank you to somebody who was kind to them, and they're paying it forward because they see the need. And the
Oh, I
community,
have so many stories I could share about that, but a couple that come to mind. One donor that lives in Kansas reached out to me, and they had inherited money from their aunt and uncle who lived in Elkhart. And the aunt and uncle didn't have any kids. And they said, we are already successful in our own regard. We don't need this. And this money really should stay in Elkhart County. They made their money in Elkhart County. We're going to give it back to Elkhart County. So they started a scholarship in their aunt and uncle's names and gave it back to Elkhart County when really they could have just walked off with that inheritance. I've had people start scholarships where they said someone paid for their college education, and so they're trying to pay it forward.
This is a very unique place. Having been raised somewhere else and moved here, I try to explain Elkhart County to people who don't live here, and they sometimes don't believe me. And I'm talking, it is in scale, this level of generosity here, and how important the Community Foundation is at the heart of that. And so many of our donors, they feel grateful to us for allowing us to be a partner with them. And it's how we feel about them and their overall generosity. And then I get to see the benefit of that in our nonprofits. We have some amazing nonprofits, not just in facilities, but in leadership, people, and mission. And the Community Foundation, particularly with your work, you and Pete's, and bringing people to understanding philanthropy and how they could give back, and then finding the gift money from Lilly and matches, and it's just an amazing work. And so we're very grateful to have you not only today here, but also just to be able to see you work. So
The generosity in Elkhart County is truly astounding and very rare. It's something that's special, and our donors grant away 3 times as much as our own fund for Elkhart County every year. So it's truly remarkable.
So with that kind of generosity and all the exciting things that are happening in our community, look ahead 10 years. What does this community look like? And the foundation where we all work, what does it look like 10 years from now?
Hopefully $1 billion or more in assets. That's a goal of mine.
Here at the foundation.
Here at the foundation. But again, I think if we're not teaching our youth about giving back to their community and philanthropy, then it could start to go down. And I hope that we continue to steward this community asset that we have and give to other nonprofits. And it's really neat to be able to pair people with causes that they care deeply about.
Carrie, at the foundation, we talk about assets and we talk about fund under management and financial terms, but you are a huge asset here
Oh, that's kind.
and in this community. The work that you do is remarkable. And we've been friends and teammates for a while, and it's a delight to work with you and also to see how you help others give and by how you give. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Marshall. That's very kind.
We always wrap up with this question. What gives you hope?
I have to say, my 3 little girls, they're 6, 4, and 2, and they're smart, they're fun, they're funny, they're talented, they're creative, and so that gives me future hope.
This show is a production of the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. It is powered by equipment from Sweetwater and recorded at the Community Foundation's offices in Elkhart's River District. Editing is done by the award-winning communication students at Goshen College, home of one of the best college radio stations in the nation. Listen to Globe Radio at 91.1 FM. Music is provided by Sensational Sounds. Learn more about the Community Foundation of Elkhart County at inspiringgood.org. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. We hope you're inspired and inspire good in your community.